Take 9,075,000,000, okay? I've tried filming this video at least 17 times before, and every single time I end up talking for way too long, and it's just like very boring. I can't even like sit through it. One time my lips were chapped. So guess what? I'm prepared today. I have my chapstick on deck. I have my water. We love water. And I also have my computer here so I can outline exactly what I want to talk about. Like I said, I filmed this 17 times before, and I'm just not playing no games this time. First up is why. You know, why am I making this video? One, because I feel like there's a lot about me that you all don't know. We all are sort of like a summation of our experiences in the past. And so in order to really understand who I am, you need to understand like what I've been through, what my life has been. And two, another reason is to connect with people out there that may have gone through some of the same things that I've gone through. I feel like there are a few people here on YouTube, when they talk about their story, they talk about it in such a raw way, and it really just does inspire other people to like share their stories, and it also makes people feel like they're not alone. That's what I wanted to, that's why I'm here, and that's what I want to do. I want to make sure people watching me who have gone through some of the same things that I've gone through don't feel alone. So let me reintroduce myself. My name is Will. It's short for William. My mom named me after William Shakespeare, and also she had a really good friend growing up named William. So I don't know, I feel like the William Shakespeare thing is like kind of a lie. She kind of just wanted to make me feel good. I was born in Somers Point, New Jersey. It's very close to Atlantic City, New Jersey. Very shortly after we moved to Pleasantville, New Jersey. Okay, so this is where I'm growing up, and this is where I'm starting my story. My first memory is of me in my pajamas, getting up out of bed, walked downstairs, and my two sisters were also awake, and we noticed that the door was open. The front door was just wide open, and out of the front door I remember seeing like sirens and an ambulance and my mom. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? This is what I literally didn't have words to speak. Like I was 3 years old, and I remember not really being like really in my head about things and just observing. And I remember standing at the doorway because there was some man that was telling us to like stay back. And we were like, okay. And I remember my mom being like laid onto a stretcher. They like strapped her down and they put her in the back of the ambulance. And I remember just being confused and just watching it. I wasn't crying. I wasn't hysterical. One of my sisters was hysterical. She was just like, what's going on? Like, this is crazy. And I was looking at her like, why is she doing that? Like, this was all so out of the blue. 10 minutes later, a woman in a black pantsuit, or it was like a pin skirt. I just remember so many details about the day. She had like black straight hair. She was a white woman, and she just told us to get into her car. And because she was an adult, we listened, and there was police there, so we felt sort of safe. And we got into the back of her car, and I remember in the back of her car, there were these huge teddy bears. It was like she had placed them there exactly for us. So there was these teddy bears in the back of her car. And I don't remember much about what happened after that. I just remember showing up like 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, nobody telling us anything about what was happening, why my mom was just put into an ambulance. We showed up at this woman's house, and I remember walking up this long sidewalk up to this woman's stairs, and she had opened up the door. It was like an older woman, an older black woman, and I remember peeking behind her, and there was like a bunch of kids in the house. The woman that took us to this woman's house, she said that this is where we'll be staying, and that this is our new home. Okay, she didn't say anything else. She just said, go in there, sis, and that's it. And I remember being like, okay, like, and my two sisters were walking all slow. I was trying to like get answers from my sisters, but they were just as confused as I was. So we end up in this woman's house, and I remember like sitting down on the couch, not really knowing what to do. I was just sitting there for like hours and hours and hours, and there was like maybe 6 other kids there already, and they were playing, and they seemed to know each other already. And I remember just sitting on the couch like, what just happened? Like, I'm still in my pajamas. I'm sitting on this woman's couch. This is my new home. I'm confused. That was my first foster home. That was my first foster home with the woman who I called grandma. And that was all I had to go off of. Nobody told me about where my mom was. Nobody talked about my mom. That was it. I just remember my sisters going off to school every day. It just seemed like we had picked up where we left off. And I stayed there until I was 5 years old. I went to pre-K under this woman's care, grandma's care. I had gotten to know the other kids who I had called my cousins at that point. I had kind of a good experience in that foster home. It wasn't the best, so everything was good. I was about 6 years old when I was released from that foster home onto the care of my family members, some family members that had agreed to like take us out of foster care. That experience was not good for me. I was beat every single day. Every single day for peeing the bed. But it was honestly something that I couldn't help, and it's honestly something that a lot of people just can't help. And sometimes you just have to wait for your body to like stop doing it. So every single day I would just wake up and just be like waiting for my, you know, aunt to have her belt and be like, you pee the bed again, like you're gonna get beaten. That was horrible. Definitely a lot of trauma for that. If you are somebody who's getting beat, okay, and you are a child, you can tell somebody. Tell somebody so that you can, you know, get out of that situation. Nobody deserves that. So moving on, I remember being released back to my mom. My two sisters and I were finally living back with my mom in one house. Everything was good. This is where I have like the most of my childhood memories come from, is like these couple of years where I was back with my mom, with my sisters. I was going to school. I had lots of friends. It was real fun. I had a normal childhood until this happened. So my sister had this friend in school, I think it was in middle school, and she had come to find out that her friend's mom was being evicted from their apartment for whatever reason. I didn't even know why. I still don't know why. But my sister was like, let me ask my mom if like your family could just stay with us for a little bit until your mom can get back on her feet. And she was obviously saying this to her friend. So I remember my mom and my sister having this conversation, and my mom was like, not really about it, because my mom was like, I don't know, I'm not really, you know, trying to get into any trouble with my landlord. But also my mom is like the sweetest person on planet Earth, and she has a heart of gold that she will take in anybody. I keep like bumping the table. Being the good person that my mom is, she took in this whole family. It was a mom and two of her sons. One was like older, like almost in high school, and the other one was 1 year older than I was. So my mom took them in, and it was nice a little bit for me because I had, you know, a friend in the house that was my age. My sisters were always way older than I was, and so I didn't really get to hang out with them. But also, it got pretty intense pretty quickly. So it turns out that the woman that was staying with us had sort of an alcohol issue. I remember she would like drink a lot and she would curse a lot. And I remember being like, can you stop? But she didn't listen, and she started to get like really fussy, not just with me, but with her kids and with my mom. I remember her staying with us for like a year, maybe even 2 years. It was supposed to be temporary at the beginning. So my mom was literally taking care of a whole family for like 2 years, okay? In addition to trying to take care of me, my two sisters, and herself. That cost money. And my mom was working overnight shifts at Kmart. She was like putting in so much work. And this woman was just like living there, not paying rent. So my mom was like, okay, if you want to keep living here, like you kind of have to pay rent because I can't afford to do all this by myself. The woman got angry and upset that my mom was asking her for money, and she went behind my mom's back and told the landlord that she had been staying there. So even though my mom was a good tenant, she always had her rent on time. When the landlord heard that there was a whole family staying in there and that my mom was starting to ask them for money, we got evicted. My sisters went to go stay with friends, and my mom and I were just homeless. I remember staying for a little bit at this one lady's house. Her name was Melody, I think. So we were staying at this person, Melody's house, for like a month or 2 months. And at that point, Melody was like, you gotta go. And so she literally packed all of our stuff up into black trash bags. That night was my first time staying in a homeless shelter. I was probably around age 11 at this point. I was going to middle school, and this is where it was like, okay, I understand, like, we are homeless and this is scary. Like, this is stuff that I've heard people go through in books and movies, and here I am in a homeless shelter. I remember going there and seeing other kids there, and it was very much like a communal situation. You get assigned a bed, you're allowed to have a few belongings, and there was like a food, like a, what is it called? a soup kitchen like down the street that you would go eat at. And so we ate at the soup kitchen. It was just really crazy and so surreal, but you know, life moves on. So we just sort of dealt with it. My mom was always telling me like, this is just temporary. We're not going to be staying here forever. Like, I'll make things right. And so the way that she wanted to make things right, even though, you know, what if, you know, I'm not going to get into it, but my dad could have absolutely helped out. My family could have absolutely helped out. So many people could have helped out knowing that we were living in a homeless shelter, not but miles away from where they lived, you know? Because a lot of people had turned us down and when my mom asked like, hey, can we stay there? Hey, can we stay there? We ended up staying in a homeless shelter. My mom got us out of there by getting a whole house, okay, in this like really fancy part of Atlantic City. And I was even confused because I was like, how are we affording to live here? You don't really too much have a job right now and we can't afford this. I don't know how we're affording this. Turns out that my mom couldn't afford where we were living. She was trying to compensate, you know, and also get back her other two daughters, you know what I mean? So we were all living in this big house. We had no furniture in it. There was days when we had no food, like literally no food. I would come home from school and there would be zero things in the refrigerator. My mom finally got a job at as a lunch lady. And she had to take the bus like hours to like 2-3 cities over for a few hours just to get to her job, to be paid like below minimum wage, just so she could make sure that we were, you know, paying rent. Thank God she was a lunch lady because she could bring food back from her job and we would eat that. But some days, yeah, it was like very difficult, especially with like 3 kids in the house and my mom and no money. My sister ended up getting pregnant and she had a baby and she moved to South Carolina. We're still in New Jersey. My other sister, tension started to rise between her, my mom, and my sister. And so she moved away. Long story short, my mom ended up losing that house. We stayed in emergency housing in this like hotel, this like really sleazy hotel next to all of the casinos in Atlantic City. But even fast forward, my mom ended up getting sick again, and that whole memory, the first memory that I had, my mom like being laid out onto a stretcher and put in the back of the ambulance, and then I being you know, taken away, it happened all over again. And then I get taken away to a boys' home. My 2 sisters were nowhere to be found. I didn't even know how to call them. I didn't know any of my family members' numbers. They just said, since we can't contact any of your family, like, we have to take you to this boys' home. There were no foster homes readily available to take me in. And it wasn't even a boys' home. It was more like a juvenile detention center. That's what it was. It was strict. You couldn't leave the building. You had to have like security clearance for certain things. The most you could do is to literally go out onto the yard and play like basketball, and then you would just have 30 minutes so it was like literally a jail. And I was in this place where people who were 16 and older usually go, okay, for small offenses, like maybe they were caught with some weed. I had no real reason to be in there other than like they didn't have a foster home for me. So I remember staying on this like hard bed. There was no windows in my bedroom. There were bars over the windows. I remember making, oh my God, this was like the saddest time of my life, but I kept on trudging through. I like sort of blurred over all of this stuff because it's just, trauma will eat at you. But because I didn't have any windows in my little bedroom that they gave me, I made like paper curtains. Oh my God, I might start crying because this was so sad. Like I was 11 years old and I was like, this is so, like, where is my family? I don't understand what's happening. I made these paper curtains to make the little room that I had a bit more cozy. And I remember going to school still every single day and hiding the fact that I was living in like a juvenile detention center. It was just a whole lot, and I was like, I can't believe this is happening. But long story short, I ended up getting taken out of that juvenile detention center and placed into a foster home. And I was like, thank God. My foster mother was very like self-driven. She had her own like hair salon. She was pretty like schedule oriented. There wasn't too much of a relationship between us. I felt like I was just like a stranger living in her house, and she would just feed me and take me to school. Anyway, things were like comfortable. It's just I didn't have a relationship with my foster mom, so it was like kind of weird. She also put me in this daycare that I was way too old for. Like I was 12 years old, turning 13 in a daycare. She would pick me up like real late at night, go back home, go to school, go to daycare, pick me up late at night, go back home, go to school. It was just very like cold and mundane, and that was that. So because it did get so mundane, And also I was 13 years old. I felt like a teenager. Maybe I felt like emboldened and just like empowered to like be my own person. I tried to run away. I remember when we were staying in that emergency housing after my mom had lost that house that she had got for all of our family, that my mom put a lot of her things in the storage room at the emergency like house place. And that whole storage room wasn't but like 2 bus rides away from where I was. So one day, instead of going from school to the daycare, I went from school to the storage room. I got them to like open the storage, and in that storage was my mom's like bank cards and all of that stuff. So I took her bank card. I was 13 years old. I don't know what I thought I was gonna do or how I was gonna like run away. Like what like really really where was I going with that? I don't know, but I really just wanted to get out of foster care. I did not want to be there. So I had all this money, and I remember being like, wow, I took out like $200, and at that time I was like, wow, this is a lot of money. What do I do now? You know what I mean? Do I just get a motel? Like, I'm 13 years old. So I remember getting really scared and being like, I don't know if I want to get away with this. So I went back to the daycare, and I got there so late that they reported me to my foster mom, and my foster mom was like, where were you? We've been looking for you. What's the tea? And I just like made up some story. I don't even know what I told her. I think I was just like, oh, I was at a club, or there was a meeting, something of that sort. I thought I had gotten away with it, and I had like $200 like tucked in the back of my pocket, and I went back to the foster home, and I like stuffed all the money in a shoebox that I thought my foster mom would never find. And then the next day I went to school. I was pulled out of class, and my foster mom was in the office, the main office. And I was like, what's going on here? Like, are you, like, is it an early day for me? Like, what's happening? Where were you yesterday? Because there was no meeting. Like, I've been talking to all your teachers and stuff here. There was no like club meeting or whatever you said there was. And I was like, oh my God. And then I think I just like made up some other story to try to cover that lie. It was like a hot mess. This is why I don't lie, because it's just too hard to keep up with lies and all that stuff. So I told her like some other story, and she was just like forced to believe it in that moment, because I was still planning to run away. I was not ready to give up because foster care was so cold and scary for me, and I didn't want to be in it anymore. So everything was good for like 2 weeks, until one day I was sitting downstairs in my foster mom's very nice condo apartment and like these luxury apartments, and I was sitting down watching TV. I think because she may have dealt with a situation like me before, like trying to run away, and she knew the signs of it, so she tried to like warm up to me and start giving me all these like, you know, treats and stuff. Like, here's like an extra dessert, sis, here you can watch TV. But I was sitting down watching like some sort of television show, and she came downstairs with her, she literally was like this, like handled her hip, and she pulled out from behind her the $200 that I had stashed in a freaking shoebox. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is scary. And I was like trying to think of a lie. She was like, where'd you get this money from? I just didn't tell her anything because I couldn't think of a lie, so I wasn't going to tell her the truth. So I was just like, oh, I don't know. And so she called my social worker. My social worker came over, and my social worker, I felt a bit more comfortable talking to her about things. So I ended up telling her that I was trying to run away, and that like I had gotten the money from my mom's bank account. And the thing is that I don't know what happened to the money. To this day, they didn't tell me anything about what happened to that money. Like, did my mom get that money back? I think that my foster parent or the social worker may have just taken it, because nobody knows where that money is at. So I don't know, shady business. Some time had transpired, and my mom actually was released from the hospital, and she went to South Carolina because my sisters had moved to South Carolina. And so my mom was now in South Carolina, all my family was in South Carolina, and I was just stuck in New Jersey in foster care with no family. So with the foster care system in New Jersey, I think it's called DIFAS. It may have changed names. But what they did is they actually released me to my mom in South Carolina. So I always tell you guys that I like went to high school in South Carolina. That's why. Took me out of school, and they flew me to South Carolina. My sister was there. She was having kids. She had a fiance. My mom was there. My other sister was there. It just felt like, wow, okay, we're finally back together as a family. And that went on for like a good year, all the way up until I was about to go to college. Sister and my mom fell out, and we got kicked out. Okay, my mom and I got kicked out of my sister's apartment. And my mom found a place in the projects. And so we moved into the projects like at the beginning of summer, right before my high school career started. And my mom got sick as well. Okay, so we were in the projects, and she got sick. And again, this whole thing happened. My mom gets pushed into the back of an ambulance and she goes into the hospital, and I end up staying with some family members. Turns out we have a lot of family in South Carolina. So I'm staying with them through the summer and for a little bit of my freshman year at high school. I got a new social worker because I was in a whole different state. I was just uncomfortable, to be honest, but I was just smiling in everybody's faces being like, yeah, everything's fine. Everything's totally fine, because the alternative to that is foster care, and I was like not trying to do that again. So at every weekly meeting with my social worker, I would just lie. I would just be like, yeah, I'm having a good time, they're treating me right, like it's all good. But it wasn't good. The family wouldn't even like buy me school supplies to go to school. And in that time I had realized that school was the only way that I was going to get out of any of this stuff happening to me. Because up until then, like up until high school, I felt like I was a chess piece. Like people were just moving me to where they wanted me to be, and I had no say in it. No say in it. Even though at meetings and stuff, social workers would be like, we just want to do what's best for you. They would never ask me what I thought was best for me. They would just do what the heck they wanted to do. And so I realized that going to school and doing well in school, like Benjamin Carson was like one of my biggest inspirations until he started acting crazy. But he was like one of my biggest examples growing up, and I wanted to be a neurosurgeon just like him. And I was like, wow, he did it. Like he got out of the projects and he moved on and up into where he is. Like I can do it too. I really just started to work hard in school. It was my main priority, period. And the people that I'm staying with didn't even send me to freshman year with like school supplies. But we made it work, sis. Over time, I was released back to my mom in the projects. I had learned like what she was going through, like what her illness was, why she would go in the hospital periodically, and that's still her story to tell. Also during this time, things were sort of weird between me and my mom, simply because I felt like I didn't know her. Like, she had spent so much time in hospitals and I had spent so much time in, foster care, that I didn't really have all of those experiences that most kids have with their parents or their family, that would bring them close together. We literally watched the Ellen show every day at 4 p.m. I remember coming home, getting my work done. My mom would start cooking. While the food was cooking, we would watch the Ellen show. And then at 5, okay, we would eat the food. In that time, my mom would, she could be like talking on the phone with her best friend. She could be getting, whatever work done. She would literally stop it and be like, Will, Ellen is the one. Because that was the only time that we had together to really like laugh together, to figure out who each other was and just like make up for lost time. And so, I don't know, shout out to Ellen. But also shout out to just like, quality time with your mom. I'm just going to work really, really hard in school and make something out of myself. And that's what I did. I ended up becoming one of the first African-American valedictorians of my high school. I had applied to 14 colleges, got into about 11 of them, won maybe 4 national scholarships that gave me a full ride to the prestigious Brown University, which is an Ivy League school. So that transition from high school into college, that was just like such a charged moment in my life, because I was like, wow, I can't believe I really did that. Like I worked so hard in high school, like trying to make 100 on every exam, getting everything in, even though we were poor, sis, the poorest of the poor. We were living in the projects, but I was going to Brown University and I was so excited. My whole like school and town got behind me, and they like low-key wrote me into the history of the city because not too many people go to like an Ivy League school from my high school or from my town. And so they just showed me mad love. So shout out to, my friend Aaliyah, who just like heard me out. She was like, I could cry right now. I've cried a lot about these things, but my friend Aaliyah was like really there for me when I was going through some things. She was the only person I would tell about like my mom being sick and foster care and all this stuff. And she helped out so much. She would take me to school every day. Shout out to Talia also, who would take me to school. Shout out to Bria, who would take me to school, when other people couldn't take me to school. Shout out to Angelica. Shout out to Aviana. Those were just like my rocks. They made sure that, we were all focused in school. And just shout out to the whole town who gave me so much support. I always am thankful for all of you for the rest of my life. But long story short, even though this story is inevitably going to be long, I got into Brown University, moved to Providence, Rhode Island. I have everything that I need. I have scholarships that are helping me pay. I get a new computer, which is right here, and it's falling apart now because I've had it for 6 years. Amenities afforded to me by way of, scholarships and the hard work that I put in, and also just by way of like being at Brown University. And I was like, you know, getting phone calls from home that my mom, you know, didn't have money for food and she was getting sick and like all these things. And it was just really, it was just a stressful time, really nuanced situation that a lot of people actually find themselves in, but you would never know it because they don't talk about it, you know what I mean? And that's why I want to talk about these sort of things. But long story short, I did get my degree in health and human biology with the focus on social context of disease and health. I graduated in 2016. I had studied neuroscience for a little bit. I studied public health for a little bit. I took up light design. I joined a gospel choir for a little bit. I joined an African modern dance team. So my college career was absolutely everything and more. I've got to learn so much about myself, be comfortable with who I am. I also found natural hair, which ended up being a big therapy for me getting through college. When those exams hit, sis, I was in the bathroom every single weekend, deep conditioning my hair, making sure that I was okay, taking care of myself while I watched and went over, you know, material from lectures. So I don't know. Shout out to natural hair as well. Natural hair is therapy. Yay. And yeah, that's that. And so that brings me to today. Okay, my mom is still periodically getting sick. She's in the hospital right now. But I have a better hold on things. Like I have a source of income, and so I can help her out with like bills. I can make sure that she is okay. I can make sure that she's eating. I can make sure, you know, I can provide a little bit more, and it's no longer an emotional experience. Like it's slightly emotional whenever she goes into the hospital and things like that. But it's no longer like me just being clouded by all my emotions. It's more like, okay, how practically can we move on? Because I know this is going to happen again. Like, how do we just move on in the most efficient way possible? So that's where I'm at now. I did move across the country because I needed space, okay? I needed space from my past life, sort of, so to speak, to grow emotionally, financially, physically. I needed that space. So I moved across the country. I have my little studio apartment. I'm eating well, exercising, making these videos. It's all fun. So I feel, you know, a lot better. But I do know that there are so many people who don't end up feeling better, and they end up, you know, in places that I couldn't imagine myself ending up in. So many foster children don't even get the chance to go to college. You know what I mean? Like it's a terrible fact, but it's true. So hold on one second. Hold on. What I want to do, and what I've always wanted to do since college, is give back to foster kids. Find a way to like make foster care just a tad bit more easy on the brain. You know what I mean? Because it was sort of really hard for me, and I wish I had something like natural hair, okay? Therapy of doing your hair and self-care through natural hair to help me figure out more about myself. So I created this t-shirt, right? And it really has nothing to do with like foster care or anything like that. And the saying on it is, split ends are like fake friends, cut them off, okay? Split ends are like fake friends, split ends are like bad experiences, split ends are like negativity, split ends are like a whole bunch of things. Cut them off, you know what I mean? 100% of the proceeds are actually going to go to foster children. And I'm going to try to find a way to use the money in a way that involves natural hair or even like a college scholarship fund. But these shirts are available now. You can go check them out in the link in the description. Support if you want to support. If not, it's totally fine. I'll probably even just donate some money myself to some foster kids. So I just wanted to like talk about my experiences, show you all this shirt, have you all support if you want to, just to connect with some of you out there, because I know I get DMs from people who are in foster care, from kids who are in foster care, who want to like start their natural hair journey, but maybe their foster parent doesn't know anything about natural hair, and or slash like their foster parent is not going to like buy hair products for them. So I just want to be that resource for foster children. So hopefully this shirt will give me the funds to start doing that. Thank you all so much for just like sitting through this whole talk. I appreciate it so much. I do want to say that I am okay, but thank you all for listening. And yeah, let me know if you've had any experiences that you want to talk about down below. It's all good. We're all here to support each other. But yeah, thanks for listening, and I guess I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.